Welcome to part 3 of my collection video for my PS1 games. If you haven't seen those first 2 parts of my collection, I suggest you go watch those instant classics right now. Otherwise, I'm going to get into the first game in this video, which is Rampage Through Time. This is an arcade-like game where you take control of a monster and destroy the town. You travel through various time periods, all while military is trying to take you out and stop your fun. The more destruction you do, the higher points you get. You can pick to choose to play as this giant ape, a wolf, a mouse, and a lobster for some reason. I don't know why, but this game feels weird to play at home. Like, I prefer to play this at the arcade. They have Rampage at my local Dave & Buster's, which is great. And for some reason, I don't want to play Rampage Through Time at home. An arcade type game that I'd rather play at home would be Ray Tracers. This is a racing game, but you can probably see that just by looking at the cover. What makes this game stand out is that you can earn points by crashing into other cars and vehicles. Burnout is the only other series I can think of that lets you do that. There's a timer that's constantly counting down, and by crashing into other vehicles, it adds more time to the clock and points. F Hulk Hogan. There, that's better. Anyway, at the end of some of the levels, there are vehicles. They act as bosses that you need to crash into to beat the level. In one of the stages, I remember there was a giant bulldozer. In another one, there was a helicopter. A bad thing about this game is that it was too short. Otherwise, it's a pretty fun game. It wasn't really a traditional racing game. Unlike this next game, Ridge Racer Type 4. This is the best Ridge Racer, hands down, and one of the best racing games on this system. Well, that and Crash Team Racing. The soundtrack still slaps. The song Move Me is one of the best songs I've ever heard. So there's 2 discs that come with this game. The original R4 Ridge Racer disc, and then the bonus turbo mode disc that performs faster at 60 frames per second. And I think it comes with a few demos too, or previews. I remember Klonoa and Tekken 3 being on the disc. I miss when these game companies used to include demo discs that comes with the games, but demo discs are a thing of the past. The next game is Rising Zan, the Samurai Gunman. Not too many people heard of this one. You play as a samurai / cowboy who is very cocky, and he has to save the townsfolk from being kidnapped, whether it's running and gunning or slicing and dicing. The main character, Johnny, has a sword and gun in his arsenal. I forgot the name of the bad guy group in this, but basically they're the Illuminati. They even have an eye as their logo or a symbol. It's yet another one of those games that will be perfect to rent back in the day from Blockbuster, and you will still have enough time over the weekend to beat it because it's that short. I think there's 9 levels you play through, and each level comes with their own gimmick. For instance, 1 minute you're battling ninjas, the next minute you're playing baseball with your sword. This game is very absurd and very violent. Oh, and this game has one of the best intros on the PS1. So if you've never seen this intro, I suggest you YouTube it. If you like Devil May Cry or Samurai Western, then you will probably enjoy this game, and this game definitely deserves to be remade. Controls haven't aged that well, unlike this next game here. Rival Schools, aka Project Justice. This is a 2-on-2 fighting game where you play as high school students and faculty members. And this game features many stereotypes of the people that you will meet in high school. For instance, I like playing with the nerd, Kyosuke, and the shortstop, Shoma. One thing to note that this game features one of the best guest characters in video game history that makes the most sense. I'm talking about Sakura from Street Fighter Alpha 2. She's playable in this. After all, she is a high school student. And just like Ridge Racer 4, this game comes with 2 discs. The first disc includes the original arcade mode, and the second Evolution disc has mini games, dating sim, and the movie viewer, so you can watch all the endings. This game is very easy to pick up and play, and this is the game that actually jump-started my hobby as a collector. I bought this back in 2011 at a pawn shop for 20 bucks, and I later went home, looked this up on eBay, and saw that it was going for $50. But now, if you look it up on eBay, it easily goes for over 100 bucks. And before this game, I didn't understand the concept of games gaining value over time. And ever since then, I've been visiting thrift and pawn shops looking for games on the cheap. Now I appreciate it even more. I'm glad I got this game when I did. The game that's on the screen currently is called Running Wild. This is a challenging racing game where you can play as anthropomorphic animals along with otherworldly creatures. Oh, and if you're a furry, then let me tell you, this is the game for you. Look at these characters. I can't show that. Yeah, oh look, I still got the memory card stickers. This is one of those games where I was good, well, decent when I played it as a child, but when I play it as an adult, I'm so terrible at it. The kid version of me will be so disappointed in the adult version of me. Do you have any games like that? And speaking of kids, now we have Rugrats Studio Tour. I remember this game being janky, and I remember there being a lot of mini games that you had to play through. Like there was a racing game where you pick a baby and you gotta race all the other ones. I think there was a hide and seek mini game as well. I may be remembering wrong, but I think there was a security guard that locked you on a studio set and you had to play through the mini games to get out and save Dill or something like that. But Dill could have stayed locked in there for all I care. I wasn't really a Dill Pickle fan. I was more of a Chucky guy. I haven't beaten this fully yet, but I might play this soon on stream, so stay tuned for that. And I'm back with another RPG. This time it's Star Ocean, the second story. This is one of those RPGs where there's multiple endings. There are 2 main characters you can select. When I played this, I picked Claude, the guy. But there is a girl, Rena, I think that's her name. Yeah, there they are right here. So I beat the game with Claude as the main character, but I want to replay this and pick Rena to see how her story differs. But there's a bunch of other characters you can recruit, depending on who you select as the main character in the beginning of the game. And I remember this being one of the few RPGs on the PlayStation where the battles take place in real time. So this isn't turn-based, and it has 2 discs. But the second disc is real short compared to the first one. And let me tell you, this is one of the best RPGs on the system. So if you haven't played this yet, go ahead and get it, because it just got ported to the PS4, PS5, Switch, and Steam, if I'm not mistaken. We're moving from one of the best RPGs to one of the best fighting games on this system. Street Fighter Alpha 3. If you ask someone what's the best fighting game on the PS1, most likely you're going to hear somebody say Tekken 3, but Street Fighter Alpha 3 comes as a close second. I spent hours and hours playing this, specifically World Tour mode, where you get to make your character OP and upgrade their stats and abilities. And hands down, this is the best Street Fighter Alpha game. I'm not going to say anything else about this game because I already spoke about this in the PSP Collection video, which you should definitely watch if you haven't done so yet. Meanwhile, I'll be moving on to the next game, which is another Street Fighter. This is Street Fighter Collection. This is the first Street Fighter Collection of many Street Fighter Collection games that will ever be released. This collection comes with Street Fighter 2 Turbo and Street Fighter Alpha Gold 2. I played the latter more, mainly because of the dramatic battle mode where you can play as Ryu and Ken versus Bison, like a 2-on-1 handicap match, which is best played in 2-player mode with a friend. But you know I don't have those. But both games are great. I just like Alpha 2 better than Street Fighter 2 Turbo. Oh, and I like the cover of this, mainly because of Chun-Li. I don't know if you can see it, but it looks like she's doing a jump shot. I always thought that was funny. But anyway, let me get into the next game, which happens to be another Street Fighter game. This time it's Street Fighter EX Plus Alpha, the first 3D Street Fighter game. Although the graphics are a bit blocky, it's still a fun time. What makes this game unique is that half of the roster included Street Fighter characters, and the other half included Arika-owned characters. Like on the Capcom side, you had the 8 World Warriors, excluding E Honda and Blanca. Oh yeah, and Sakura was here too. But on the Rika side were characters like D-Dar, Garuda, Pullum, and of course the lovable Skullomania, the hero that we didn't even know we needed. He is so much fun to play. And let me tell you about the soundtrack. It's one of those soundtracks that you wish you can hear for the first time again. It has Dhalsim's best theme ever. Chun-Li's themes is Flames. And I gotta mention Guile's theme, Strange Sunset, which is clearly superior over his Street Fighter 2 theme. Yeah, I said it. Let me move on to the next game, which is Street Fighter EX2 Plus. This is one of the only Street Fighter games that I know of that doesn't feature Ryu on the cover. Instead, it has his boy Ken. And in my opinion, this is the best game in the EX series. The vibe is different. It just feels better to play. And overall, it's one of my favorite Street Fighter games ever. It's kind of crazy how these games haven't been ported to newer consoles, so only on the PlayStation and PlayStation 2 can you play this EX series. This next game is a weird one, Silhouette Mirage. I don't know if you can see the title, but this is a platformer / side-scrolling shooter where the enemies comes in two classes, Silhouette and Mirage. And you have two weapons, Silhouette and Mirage. And depending on which way you're facing the enemy, the properties of your weapon will change. So the main character is named Sheena, and when they're facing the left, they have Silhouette properties. When they're facing the right, it changes to Mirage property. And you can only damage the enemy with the opposite property. So it's just not your typical run and gun, shoot 'em up type of game. You have to actually think about how to take down the enemy that you're facing. And the game looks great. I love the 2D animation style. Also, there's a Lunar 2 preview on this disc. These next two games reeks of late 90s awesomeness. It ain't even funny. Street Skater and Street Skater 2. As you probably guessed, yes, these are skateboarding games. These games can also be considered racing games. You have to get to the finish line with a certain amount of time, and at the same time, you have to score high enough to get to the next level, because there is a point requirement in each stage. I like both games for different reasons. In Street Skater, you can skate as a chimpanzee, and I can't name any other game that'll let you do that, so props. But in Street Skater 2, I like the soundtrack more. There are songs from the Deftones, Citizen King, Devil Funky Homo Sapien, and Show Off, and I still listen to the soundtrack to this day. There are some things I also don't like about both games, like the grinding. Well, in the first game, you barely get any points for grinding. In the second game, you gotta press 4 buttons to do a single grind, and still the points aren't even worth it. Tricks that are done when you jump off the ramp are worth more points, but in the first game, you can't directly control the trick. You just jump off the ramp and hope for the best. And the points threshold in the later levels are a little bit too hard. And you know what? That's probably why there's no Street Skater 3. Plus, there was a certain other skateboarding franchise that was killing the competition. And we're back to Street Fighter, but this is Super Puzzle Fighter 2, Turbo. Basically, this is what happens when Street Fighter meets Tetris, but it's a little bit harder than Tetris because blocks of the same color will drop to the same color and it will form one giant gem, which can be tough to get rid of. And did I mention this game has some of your favorite Capcom characters in the chibi style? Underrated platformer alert, underrated platformer alert, Skull Monkeys. This is one of my childhood games that I could never beat, even as an adult, because the later levels are so hard. The furthest I got without cheat codes was this level that takes place high up in the sky, and you're hopping off a cloud to other clouds, but I always fell off. This game is ugly. It uses gross toilet humor, but in a way it's kind of charming, kind of hard to explain. Easily one of the best platformers on the system, and if you have time, look up the bonus music for this game. It's top tier. This next game is also underrated. Snowcross Championship Racing. This is a racing game where you race on snowmobiles, and in between races you can buy new parts, upgrade, and repair your parts. They might have got damaged during the race. And let me tell you, this game is worth the price. It usually goes for $5 to $10, and it's worth every penny. It's easy to pick up and play, and the levels are challenging but not too hard, somewhere in the middle. So this next game is a hack and slash, and not too many people know about it. Soul of the Samurai. I think it's called Ronin Blade in other territories. I forget their names, but you can play as a male or a female. The male uses swords, and I want to say the female uses knives or shurikens. It's been a while since I played this. You know, I do remember this game being similar to Onimusha because the enemies you battle are very zombie-like. Thankfully, it doesn't have tank controls. You can learn special attacks, special combos, and I remember this game not being long at all. And it was pretty fun too. I'll have to replay this someday. The next game is a side-scrolling shoot 'em up called Soul Divide. An interesting thing about this game is that you don't control a ship, you control a character. There's 3 characters you can choose from, and they look like they come straight out of an RPG. And the backgrounds are colorful. You can slash enemies up close, you can shoot them from afar, and you can use magic spells to wipe out most of the enemies on the screen. If things get too hectic, that is. Another unique thing about this game is that you can touch enemies and not get damaged, as long as they're not attacking. This next game has one of the best intros of all time. Soul Blade. You always have to watch the intro when you load up the game. This game plays a lot like Tekken 2, but if every character had a weapon. I always used to like playing as Boldo and Soul Mina. And there was this RPG mode that you can play through to unlock new weapons. I always thought that was cool. But I didn't like how the weapons had their own health bar and they could break. And you could potentially fight battles unarmed if your weapon takes too much damage. Soul Calibur, which came out on the Dreamcast, is better, but Soul Blade is still fun. Easily the best weapon-based fighting game series. Or at least the start of it. South Park. I'm going to be real with you here. This game is terrible. This is a first-person shooter. Well, not really a shooter. You throw snowballs. Turkeys have taken over South Park, and you gotta throw snowballs at them to defeat them. You can choose one of the 4 boys, or you can choose their arm, because that's all you see during normal gameplay. You'll hear them say catchphrases from the show every so often. I love cheesy poos. Wait, no I don't. You can unlock more South Park characters, but this game isn't really worth playing through. It's repetitive. There are good South Park games that are out there, but this ain't one of them. And to tell the truth, I might sell this game. It's just sitting here collecting dust anyway. Unlike these next 2 games, Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2 Enter Electro. Both games were good, but I like the first Spider-Man game better. The missions were more fun in the first game. The villains were cooler in this one too. You had Lizard Man, Doc Ock, Mysterio, and Carnage. While the second game had Electro, the Shocker, Beetle, and Hammerhead. That Hammerhead fight was really annoying now that I think about it. Spider-Man 2 had a lot of aggravating missions in it, and the second game felt rushed compared to the first one. But in both games, you can unlock cool things like costumes, comic books, new powers. I think this was the first game that started doing that in the Spider-Man series. Both games were using the same engine that they made the Tony Hawk games in. This is when Activision was still cool. Now, it just seems they pump out nothing but Call of Duty games. This next game is horrible, if you can call it a game. Spice World. This is a game featuring the Spice Girls where you had to make them perform. You had to choose the song and choreograph the dance steps. There's only 5 songs available, so it gets old pretty quick. And they didn't even have my favorite Spice Girls song, To Become One. But it has these 5 songs that you see on the screen right now. And for some reason, it's chibi versions of the Spice Girls with the big old heads and little bodies. My favorite Spice Girl was always Ginger Spice, just in case you're wondering. Star Gladiator. This is a lesser known fighting game done by Capcom. If you play Marvel vs. Capcom 2, this is where Hayato comes from, because he's also in Marvel vs. Capcom 2. But he's in 2D in that game, while he's in 3D in Star Gladiator. Hayato's cool, but I always like to play with the green alien with the yo-yo. Saturn. That was his name. I think he got veneers. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe this game started off as a Star Wars fighting game, which is bad by the way, but they changed their minds at the last minute, and that's how we got Star Gladiator, the underrated 3D weapon-based fighting game, which is about to be featured in a Capcom fighting game collection that's coming out real soon. Streak is a hoverboard racing game. I would tell you if it's good or not, but I haven't played it yet because it's sealed. When's the last time you seen a sealed PS1 game? I'm not one of those collectors who keep their games sealed. I'm planning on opening this and playing it. And I think this is a 3D hoverboard racing game. And I think there's a sequel on the Dreamcast. This next one is also underrated. Taifu Wrath of the Tiger. This is a side-scrolling platformer / beat 'em up where you play as a tiger that knows martial arts. And I swear DreamWorks stole the concept of this game when they made Kung Fu Panda, because there is a Monkey Clan, Crane Clan, Mantis, Panda, Snake, and of course Tiger Clan. But there is a Dragon Master, and you gotta defeat him. I plan on streaming this real soon, so be on the lookout. This is another good game that's stuck on the PS1, unfortunately. I wish it was ported to a newer console. These next 2 games are some of my favorites. We have Tekken 2 and Tekken 3. Classic fighting games. I can still remember running home from school and going home just to play these games. And I was fat at the time. Fat boys don't run, but I did in those times, back when I was in middle school. Anyway, I still get chills when I watch the intros of these 2 games because they were cutting edge graphics at the time. These are some of the best looking games on the PS1. If there was a list where it shows the games that I put in the most hours in, I played the hell out these games back in the day. Whether it's alone in my room or playing with my neighbors. We used to go over each other's houses and play these two games all the time. We have sessions that would last hours and hours. 2-player mode, team battle mode, arcade mode, Tekken ball mode, Tekken force mode, you name it. I always like pulling out that Paul Phoenix move. I forgot what the move is called, but I'll just refer to it as a punch of awesomeness. It's so satisfying landing the hit and then seeing your opponent roll to the other side of the screen. But I will say I still play these two games like they're new. They're still fun, and I'll never stop playing them as long as I live. Test Drive 4. I remember playing this demo back in the day when I was a kid, and I just got this game a few months ago as an adult, and it's just as fun as I remembered. When people mention racing games on the PS1, not many people talk about the Test Drive series. They should, because these games are great. I always used to pick the Blue Dodge Viper. That thing was fast. If you know, you know. I got another twofer coming up. This time it's the next Tetris and Tetris Plus. I remember in the next Tetris, you'll be playing and there will be EDM in the background. You can change the music tracks with the top buttons. Other than that, the game is very average. Tetris Plus switches it up because you see that little professor right here? He's trapped in the Tetris world and the objective is to clear a path. Keep doing Tetris so he has a way to escape to the bottom. All while there are spikes coming from the top of the screen. It's kind of annoying because the professor is constantly moving around, trying to find a way to escape, but he sometimes moves towards the spikes. But once he touches it, you have to start all the way back over. But yeah, those are the two Tetris games on PS1. They were really cheap. I think I got them both for $5 each. So the next game in the stack is Thousand Arms. If you ever came across that PS1 playlist with relaxing music, the character that you see in that video is from this game. Mice is his name. He's a player or something like one though. This is a RPG and dating sim, and there's turn-based battles, but you can only use 2 characters even though you have a party full of members. One is used as the main attacker and the other party member is used for support, like healing and stuff. So you meet a few girls throughout the story mode and you can go on dates with them, and you learn new spells depending on the way you answer their questions during the date. You can learn new spells and learn upgraded versions of spells you already have in your arsenal. It's a truly unique experience. This game has 2 discs, and I feel like this game should have came out on the Sega Saturn or the Sega CD. It has that type of vibe, I suppose. But if you ever played an RPG on either of those systems, then you probably know what I'm talking about. Oh yeah, we got Threads of Fate, an underrated classic. This is an action RPG where you can play as 2 characters, Rue and Mint, in their own separate little journeys. Rue, on the left, he can shapeshift into any enemy in the game, and he uses a giant pizza cutter weapon to fend off enemies. And Mint, she's a magic user. She's funny. She's a comic relief. She's my favorite character of the 2 because her story is more entertaining. She's a troublemaker, while Ruse is more straightforward, generic, but still good. And even though they have separate goals, they eventually cross paths and team up to accomplish one common goal. Even though I consider this game a masterpiece, it has some of the most terrible platforming ever. Go play it. Nightmare Creatures is a game I haven't even played yet. Wait a minute. I played a demo of this a long time ago, and people consider this to be like the first type of the Souls games, but I haven't played a Souls game, so I don't know what is meant when they say that. But one thing I do remember about the demo is that it's very ambitious. It's a 3D hack and slash type of game. It's also a horror survival. This type of game isn't a normal occurrence on the PS1. Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver. I think this is the second game in its series, but this is the only game in the series that I own. But anyway, this is a third-person action game. It has puzzle solving and platforming elements. I played this demo at the beginning of this year, and I remember you had to traverse in two realms. Both realms are scary, by the way, and fight with demons or demon-like creatures. I used to see this game in magazines or images from this game in magazines, and I always had trouble trying to figure out who the main character was because there would be the main character and some enemies on the screen, but they both will be looking evil. But I think the main character looks this way because of something his father did, and now he's cursed. And I think this game, along with the other games in this series, are being ported to newer consoles as a part of a collection. So I might not even play this and just get the collection instead. Blasto is a hard as nails platformer. I mean, the game is easy in the first level, but after that, the difficulty ramps up to 10. You play as Blasto and you're having space adventures, shooting at aliens, saving bimbos, not bimbos, babes. The aliens have captured the babes and you need to save them. And to be honest, I haven't even beat this yet. The platforming is janky. You can fly around on a jetpack, which is also janky. The cover is shiny, so it has that going for it. Oh, and Phil Hartman voices Blasto, and probably his last speaking role. So rest in peace to him. Another hard platformer is Mega Man 8, but this isn't janky. Nope, these controls are so tight. There's an animated intro and cutscenes. The intro is classic, by the way. The gameplay is crazy fun. The background is colorful and very detailed. Yeah, just another good Mega Man game. And this is the last game I'm going to show off in this vid. So be on the lookout for the next part, SDFM. Stay tuned for more.